With Miami's offseason moves likely done, we're answering your questions about the team's future. Who should be starting next season? Who's the next star player the Heat could pursue? And is this version of the Heat done? We open up the mailbag on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Heat, your everyday podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day, Monday to Friday. I'm Wes Goldberg. I'm the editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members, and today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Before we get into today's mailbag, I want to read this message from Sean, who responded to our show yesterday about whether or not the walls are closing in on the Miami Heat. He says this: as a 3-year Heat season ticket member who's locked in for 2 more seasons, I can appreciate the Heat's not wanting to tank and put a competitive team on the floor each season. Obviously, I don't want to spend my money and time watching a sorry team lose a bunch of games. However, the Heat are at a crossroads. The team is not nearly good enough to win a championship, but just a little too good, if healthy, to actually miss the playoffs and get a lottery pick. Heat culture gets attributed to Pat Riley, but its championships and finals appearances were only made possible by Dwayne Wade, with his play and recruiting of LeBron, Bosh, and Jimmy. The Heat shouldn't waste this season running it back. There doesn't seem to be a trade that can help them compete for a championship. I would take a chance on both Zach LaVine and Lonzo Ball, since the Bulls would give them both away, but most Heat fans don't like that idea. So it's probably best to Semitank, to keep our pick for a draft that has a lot of talent. Trade Jimmy to New Orleans for Brandon Ingram. If he plays well, then maybe the Heat have found a young star to pair with Bam. If he plays badly, he's in a contract year. Let him walk for cap space or use him as a trade asset for a star player. Unload players like Terry Rozier and Duncan Robinson to teams with cap space to lower your cap hit even more, and play the younger players a lot this season. And that's the end of Sean's message. So we're going to get into a little bit of this whole topic more in today's mailbag, David, but I think Sean might generally have the right idea, even if I disagree with some of those specific trades, Jimmy for Brandon Ingram, all those things. But the Heat, the more I look at this chessboard, it feels like the Heat are planning to make moves next year and not this summer. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I think there was a limit to what they could do, and I think the expectation is that Jimmy will be at that specific crossroads, and he is the biggest piece on that chessboard. They've got Bam locked in. They've got their young players. I think the market for some of the role players that might have been viewed as tradable assets, whether Duncan Robinson, Tyler Herro, etc., there was a limited market for that. And I think you're looking at next offseason, and you could probably start what might be considered a reset, if not a full rebuild.
I think they're looking at next. Yes, they obviously were looking at the market to see what would be available. That thing wasn't available. When Jimmy Butler decided not to force a tough decision, perhaps, and just say, you know what, I'm just going to play my contract. I'll deal with this next year. When Jimmy Butler decided to just deal with this next year, it kind of felt like the Heat also decided to just deal with this all next year. And you've been kind of talking about this as a last dance. I've called it a gap year. I don't really know what it is. All I know is maybe it's a bridge season into the next era of Heat basketball. We could call it all these different things.
Yeah.
But that big move just hasn't really been out there. I do think that the Heat looked. I think they're still looking. There's still 3 months between now and the start of next season. But as we've seen over the first basically month of this offseason and the 2 off seasons prior, it's really hard to just trade for a star player. I know fans want to snap their fingers and say, go get Trae Young, go get Lauri Markkanen, do all these things. And it's clearly not that easy. And it hasn't been that easy now for a very long time. It's not a matter of just trading Tyler Herro for a star player, as much as maybe Miami has even wanted that to be the case, perhaps, for guys like Kevin Durant and Donovan Mitchell and Damian Lillard and whatever. So I do think that there is something to that. This is about now. I think that they'll still look between now and the trade deadline, as they always are. But it does it does feel a lot like maybe next summer might be the summer. But we're going to dive into all that kind of stuff here as we get into the mailbag. Let's start with this first question from Brian, who writes in.
Well, should we address Sean's overall point about, I mean, so there were some specific moves there that he had, mentioned, I think we can kind of Not necessarily
Okay, Zach
dismiss all
LaVine,
those.
no. Too long under contract, not going to happen. Lonzo Ball, he's probably not even
No,
going to
but
play this year.
he's calling for like basically a full teardown of the roster. And I'm at a point now where I just don't see that. Like you have Bam Adebayo, and I don't know that when you have Bam under contract for the next 4 seasons that you're ever going to be bad enough. Like I mean, they've got Jaime Jaquez, they've got Niko Jovic, they've got enough good young players on this roster, and with Eric Spoelstra here, I don't see them ever getting to the point where they're going to lose less than 35 games.
Win less than 35 games.
I mean, a win less than 35 games. Yeah. So
Well, he said he called for a semi-tank. Whether or not that's trading Jimmy or whatever. And again, we've talked about so many different Jimmy Butler trade ideas. I'm almost sick of it at this point. But a semi-tank, that's not a complete teardown. That is, I think you and I talked about this off air maybe yesterday. It's, hey, if this team, if it's looking like a play-in team again in February, March, April, maybe there is a made-up hamstring issue for Jimmy Butler at the end of the year. You know, maybe there is a made-up shoulder injury for Bam Adebayo for the last month of the season, specifically because this 2025 draft is supposed to be so loaded. And yeah, they're not going to have any chance at Cooper Flag. But the Hawks just went from 9th in lottery odds to 1st. It's not impossible. And if this team is just saying, like, look, we're limping again into the playoffs, do we really want to do this again? I would not put it. I know that the Heat never tank and blah, blah, blah. They have. They've done this before. Where in the last month of the year, it looks like all hope is lost. And they say, you know what? Some made up injuries here and there, kind of go. And then you keep your pick, which is top 14 protected. If the Heat make the playoffs, that pick goes to Oklahoma City. If they want to pick in 2025, I don't know. I wouldn't take it off the table as an option. It's not like I'm predicting that that's going to happen. It really depends on where this team is at the end of the season. But that to me would be like what the semi-tank looks like, not sort of, to your point, David, trading a bunch of players right now.
Fair enough.
All right. Brian writes in, as much as everybody wanted a big move next season or this season, next offseason has a bunch of guys on tradable expiring deals or one-year options. Isn't it better to run it back this year for the optionality next offseason versus making lateral moves, such as Zach LaVine, Brandon Ingram, that will cost more long-term money? So Brian says it's really next summer that it's all about. You agree?
Kind of an extension. Yeah, an extension of the first question there.
Exactly.
I think it's kind of saying, you know what, similar to what we kind of are on the same page about, you know, those kind of moves for Ingram, LaVine, et cetera, not going to help Miami. It's not necessarily change for change's sake, but you're neither getting worse to such a huge degree that you improve your draft lottery odds, or you're not getting significantly better to the point where you're going to be a great playoff performer or anything like that, or assure yourself a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. Adding Ingram, presumably to, you know, to replace Tyler Herro isn't going to take this team into a top 5 offense. Like I don't think that's the case. I don't know where New Orleans wound up last year, but I just don't think it's going to make that move. Zach LaVine, who knows what you're getting from him? Like, does he have the potential to be an all-star level performer? Sure, but he's also oft injured, and I think a little bit older, and I don't know that he's going to fit into this group necessarily. And again, if you're looking to maintain flexibility for next offseason, then adding his contract, which is significantly heavier,
3 years, 150 left. Yeah.
Than Tyler Herro's, that's a step backward financially. So those kind of moves are very short-sighted, and they don't translate into any kind of real progress or improvement. So I agree with Brian. I think if you're going to be updating this roster or overhauling it to any kind of degree, you're going to have to wait until next year. The moves that everybody kind of called for this offseason just didn't exist, whether for a superstar, it was Donovan Mitchell or bust.
Yep.
And it didn't work out that way. Donovan Mitchell, if he had chosen not to re-sign with Cleveland, that would have opened a door for Miami to be like, hey, guess what? We'll gladly take your contract here. And then who knows what would have happened with Jimmy? Who knows?
It's sort of funny, right? Because last year we were just strung along by Damian Lillard for 3 months, and we're like, wow, we still have hope. We still have hope. We still have hope. This summer, that hope, the door on that hope was shut
it was dashed
right away.
Right.
It was like Donovan Mitchell went on Instagram Live and said, I'm re-signing. He re-signed Cleveland. We're like, oh, well, now what? But it's basically the same song and dance as last summer, except we weren't strung along, which I guess is better. Right. To your point on Zach LaVine, I think he'd be a great fit on this roster if he was making $25 million. He's not. He's making twice that. That's the problem. And in today's CBA, you get 2 max players. That's what you get, right? Unless you're Philadelphia or some of these other teams that say, you know what, we're going to go all in on 3 and the hell with the luxury tax. We're just going to blow by it or whatever it is. You basically get 2 max players. 2 players making $50 million plus. Bam's already making that with this new extension. He's going to be making that. The question for Miami is not if Miami were to explore the Zach LaVine trade, the question wouldn't be, does Zach LaVine make us better? That's not the question that they have to answer. The question is Bam Adebayo and Zach LaVine as a tandem good enough to help us win a championship? Clearly, the answer to that question is no. And every other front office has to ask themselves that same question. Is Zach LaVine good enough to be one of our max players? And the answer is obviously no for every front office in the league. And that's why the Bulls can't give Zach LaVine away. It has nothing to do with Zach LaVine as a player. I like Zach LaVine as a player. He's making way too much money. He's making way. And Brandon Ingram is sort of the new Zach LaVine, where he's going to be an interesting test case, right? Exactly, will be, where he wants $200 million extension, 4 years. Basically, he wants Zach LaVine money.
Yeah.
I don't know the front office that gives him that. And I think we're going to enter a world now in the NBA where these guys who have always been sort of like the outline of a max player, but not really ever impact winning basketball the way that a max player ought to. I think where in the past you just gave them the max because you were like, whatever, just give them the max. And the hard cap is fake and we can kind of blow by it if we have to and spend the luxury tax. Let's just get the guy. Teams can't do that anymore, right? It's not just the financial constrictions. It's how punitive going over that second tax, even the first tax, is from a roster construction standpoint. It's just harder to fill in the gaps now when you're a luxury tax team. And so I think when Brandon Ingram enters free agency next year, because I don't see that extension happening for him, when he enters free agency next year, he's not going to make that money. And so it's going to be an interesting test case on where sort of these in-between sort of all-star-ish kind of fringe players end up having to negotiate. But with all of that being said, if it is about next summer, then there are a few names that could be available that Brian alluded to, guys on expiring contracts or one-year options. We'll talk about those names. Also, what else can the Heat do this summer? We're going to talk about all of that next on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, the views from your seat feature, and their lowest price guarantee. All that and more. That's what makes GameTime the best available price to get tickets. It takes the guesswork out of buying tickets for Major League Baseball concerts, comedy shows, whatever you're looking for. You're going to find it over in GameTime. Again, the last-minute deals, such a convenient thing. You can save up to 60% off buying your last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater. Again, whatever you might be looking for, you could find it at the last minute. Let's say plans change, right? You had some kind of idea, or maybe you were traveling and you had a little bit more free time. That meeting you were at ended a couple hours earlier. You're like, you know what? I'm in town for a couple hours more than I expected to be. Now I want to take advantage of it. Go to the GameTime app. Boom, you get your tickets and you find them at the best price available. You can see exactly where you're going to be sitting from the seat view feature there so that you know there's no obstruction. You're not going to be sitting way in the back where you can't even see the stage, or even to the side there where it's really inconvenient. You know, you don't want to worry about that. And GameTime's got you covered. And they've got their all-in pricing, so you know exactly what you're getting when you buy those tickets. No added fees, nothing at the last minute to kind of change what the final price tag might be. That's why you should download the GameTime app today and then create an account. And if you use the code LOCKEDONNBA, you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA, and you get $20 off. So download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Miami Heat talk every day, 5 days a week. If you're new to us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, like the video. You can also follow us on your favorite podcast app. So going back to Brian's question here about maybe next summer is the summer. Well, who are the stars that are going to be available next summer? The free agent market doesn't project to be awesome. Lauri Markkanen is sort of the big name, but I think he's probably going to sign an extension, so he's not going to be available. Brandon Ingram, again, we just talked about that. That's not really the big name. Kyrie Irving has a player option. I don't really see that happening. It feels like he's pretty happy in Dallas, but you never know. But the Heat have also had a chance to acquire Kyrie Irving in the past and declined to even try. So I'm more looking at not the free agent class, but players who might be in more of a Donovan Mitchell situation, 1 year left on their contract, unwilling to extend, and might be able to be acquired in a trade.
All right.
And the first name I go to is De'Aaron Fox. He's basically said that he's not interested in signing the extension right now. He does have another year to do it, right? So that makes sense why he wouldn't sign it now. Wants to see how the season plays out. I like DeMar DeRozan for Sacramento. I think that was a fine move. It doesn't put them at championship contending tier, though. Makes them a little bit better in a very competitive Western Conference. But I don't look at the Kings on the same level as Oklahoma City, Minnesota, Denver. They're not there. And so De'Aaron Fox has been there for a long time. He's been in Sacramento for a long time. Dutiful, good soldier. Does he get sick of it? You know, and he might. I've had a chance to interact with De'Aaron Fox quite a bit. For what it's worth, he seems very happy there. He loves being sort of the face of the franchise. He has a home and a family in the Sacramento area. He seems good. Yeah. But at what point do you just look around and say, enough is enough. I'm ready for a change of scenery. I want to win at the highest level.
Yeah.
Bam Adebayo, Kentucky. De'Aaron Fox, Kentucky. That's the guy I'm looking at. No prediction, no reporting, just the guy I'm looking at.
No, yeah, I think, this isn't kind of pushing the narrative or the idea or anything like that, because this is how it works out in the NBA. A player who has been in a situation like Sacramento, where he's gone through losing, they make incremental growth. They're a very good team, not a great team. They're a good team in the Western Conference. They've made the playoffs now a couple seasons in a row. It's interesting to see where he's what he wants to do next, because he's at that point where he's made some money. I think he's, as you said, due for a bigger contract.
Yeah.
So he's at a very crucial point, kind of like what we saw with Donovan. And Utah made that decision for Donovan, basically saying, you know what, we don't see you as part of our future. They made the decision to kind of blow things up, what a lot of Miami fans are calling for from the Heat front office. And, that's too late. That ship has sailed. And I don't know that they had either a Rudy Gobert to trade to Minnesota for 5 picks, nor did they have a Donovan Mitchell that they could trade for everything they got from Cleveland. So, now Sacramento's at a point, instead they're going the opposite route. They're saying, you know what, we want to sink as much as we can into this phase and hope for the best. And maybe they can get lucky, and maybe they can't get to the Western Conference Finals. From all the reports, they're not done either. They're looking to acquire a Markkanen or somebody else to kind of complement. Yeah, that's the plan. Who knows if that pans out or not. But as far as Fox is concerned, you have to look at this season, and they made their big moves. Maybe they get Laurie, maybe they don't. Regardless, he's at a point now where he's like, you know what? I want to win. I'm going to get my money either Sacramento or elsewhere. That's not the point. I want to win. And if they can't get it done, and knowing that they've locked into Sabonis, they're locked into DeRozan for the next couple of seasons, and if they can't still get it done, he might be like, you know what? I've tried here. I was, as you said, the dutiful soldier, but I've got to go explore other options so that I can start carving out my own legacy in a different way. And maybe playing alongside a good friend and former teammate in Bam Adebayo is the way to go. He's talked about Miami culture. He's talked about the coaching staff and the stability and everything else like that.
Yeah.
That has to be appealing to a player like him. I mean, I know there's another player that kind of fits the same mold that maybe we can talk about. I don't know what his contract situation is, but that's for another question that we were asked about. Team USA.
All right. Good tease. He's going to be 27, De'Aaron Fox will be. You mentioned he's going to get paid. He's going to get paid all of the money, all of the years. De'Aaron Fox is an awesome player. He's a borderline all-NBA guy. Put him on a winning team in a bigger market. He is an all-NBA guy, maybe a perennial all-NBA guy. Showed up big time in the playoffs 2 years ago with a broken fingertip or something, or whatever it was, against the Golden State Warriors. If not for that, they probably beat the Warriors in that series. He's awesome. He's developed as a three-point shooter. And if you're building around Bam Adebayo going forward and his timeline, obviously from an age perspective, De'Aaron Fox fits, but on the court, that's perfect. Everything that Domantas Sabonis has been able to provide De'Aaron Fox in terms of a two-man game partnership, Bam Adebayo brings all of that stuff too, plus can actually play defense, right? Where in a way that Sabonis can't. So on the court, it's a great fit too. And De'Aaron Fox is a smart guy. He understands that. Again, I don't want to get Sacramento Kings fans mad. We're not trying to trade your best player. But if you're the Heat and you're looking down the road and you're like, all right, who could be the next star available now that Damian Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, like all the ships have sailed on those guys, That's one guy that I have mentioned, and you mentioned too, one other guy that we'll get to later on. Let's quickly
Is there anybody that's more of a mid-tier guy? Because I think there's a lot of frustration that Miami's plan is always acquire the next superstar, but is there
I don't know,
somebody
the
that
Jeremy
maybe
Grants, the Kyle Kuzmas, all that stuff. The problem is that these players are so hard to acquire in this new apron world, and I don't want to get into all the numbers and stuff.
Sure.
It's a worthwhile question. It's just the mid-tier guy was Terry Rozier. That was it. That was the guy. Maybe there's a lateral move. You swap Tyler Herro for another. Like, yeah, maybe that stuff is out there. But even trading Tyler Herro from Brandon Ingram, right now the Heat can't do that, and neither can New Orleans. By the way, like it's not just easy like doing that, right? It's not. And hey, the Hawks are trying to give Trae Young away. No, they're not. Trae Young's value is so low that they've decided that it's not worth trading him. There's a very big difference between all of that stuff, right? And so I see all this stuff all the time in our comments, and it's like, all right. How well do you know the second apron rules? How well do you know the first apron rules? Because this stuff is really difficult to do. That's why Miami, by the way, made the Terry Rozier trade. Also, when they did it, was because it was before all these new apron rules got layered on top of what they're doing. Malachi writes in, and this will be a quick one. How much money exactly does the Heat have left, and could they swing a deal with Tyus Jones to come in and be a backup point guard? No, they have $1.5 million under the second apron. Not only can they not sign Tyus Jones, who's a free agent, they can't even sign Cole Swider. They can't sign Alondes Williams to a standard roster spot. So
not now, right? Like later down the season as a prorated contract. So
in March is a prorated whatever, yeah. But
yes,
Tyus Jones. Here's some breaking news. Will not also be available in March. He's gonna get signed by somebody. None of that stuff, the prorated crap, I don't care about that. It's March. Right now, this team is what it is. This is the 14-man roster, unless they make some sort of salary cap saving move, which all indications are, and all the reporting around it, and I've heard the same thing. They're not interested in just making a move just to save some money to go out and sign a free agent who is still available right now. So, yeah. What will the Heat's starting lineup be? We got a bunch of questions about that. We've been pitched some surprising options. We'll talk about all of that next on Locked On Heat. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Miami Heat talk every day, 5 days a week. If you're new to us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support us. Let us know in the comment section what stars you're looking at down the line. Also follow us on your favorite podcast app. We've got some starting lineup questions. Let's just jump into them really quick. Claudia writes in, who starts, Duncan or Tyler? Who do you think?
I think it's Duncan. I think Miami has to be at a point where they recognize what Tyler is capable of, and egos be damned and everything else like that. This is I think a situation where they can help Tyler, and he might be resistant to it. But when we were talking about Tyler's best season, realistically as a pro, was him coming off the bench and winning Sixth Man of the Year, and being that kind of player where everybody was like, you know what, he's very valuable in that specific role, instead of asking him to do too much. And if that's the case, it helps the team by getting that kind of player off the bench. It also helps the player so that you could fine tune your role. Like look at Malik Monk, right? I mean, Malik Monk is making less than Tyler, whatever. But Malik Monk was basically out of the league. He's been like on his third team in as many years. He was really like devalued in terms of what he was capable of bringing. And then he goes to Sacramento, and they were like, you know what? We're going to use you in this specific way, and it works. And yes, he hit big shots, and he did a lot of good things for a team that's on the rise. But I think that's where Tyler needs to kind of accept the reality that those days, however unrealistic it was for him to even utter to be in the same sentence as Luka Doncic and Trae Young and everything else, that's not realistic. It never was, maybe, but it certainly isn't now. And that being the case, then you have to say, you know what, star in your role. And your role as a star might be as a sixth man, to be the best sixth man you can be. Yep. So to me, I think Duncan greases the wheels offensively for this team in a way that Tyler cannot. Tyler coming off the bench is a much more helpful player, I think, and a guy who can develop chemistry with Kevin Love, with Jaime Jaquez, and with Khalil Ware should he be off the bench.
I agree with everything you're saying. Tyler Herro as a sixth man is literally the best in the league at that, the last time he did it.
Yeah.
He's the best at that. The Heat really struggled at being elite at anything last year. I know having an elite sixth man of the year doesn't make you necessarily, but it's something.
It helps.
Right? It helps. And Duncan Robinson, to your point, the way that he's just so comfortable playing off the ball. I remember him talking with him on this podcast about how he fits in with guys like Bam and Jimmy, and he was he said it's a math problem, right? It's Jimmy and Bam want to operate in the mid-range. I could do the mid-range stuff, but playing next to them, I've got to dominate from three-point range. And that's why I decided to, learn how to put the ball on the ground and attack closeouts and get to the basket. All those shots have to be efficient. He helps Miami's offense in a tremendous way. So I agree with everything you said, but I'll believe that Tyler Herro is coming off the bench when I see it. In terms of what I think will happen, not what I think should happen. That's very different.
Right. Yeah.
What do I think will happen? I still think Tyler Herro is going to start, but I could be wrong. And
what's the issue here? Like, I mean, we're
so here's what I think is Eric Spoelstra has recognized if no matter who comes off the bench, Duncan, Tyler, whatever, we still stink on offense, and we're going to stink on offense no matter what. The only way to hit a higher ceiling is for Tyler Herro to learn how to play next to Jimmy and Bam. Because the one thing about Tyler, that guy goes out and scores 20 points a game. And Duncan Robinson, as much as we love him, there's a lot of off shooting nights for that guy. And there are. And so it's with Tyler, he's just more productive. And I think that Eric Spoelstra has always sort of erred on the side of...
We're talking about volume, though, shot volume. That's the whole thing. I know maybe he doesn't want to...
more efficient. I mean, he can get to more spots on the floor. I mean, he's just going to fill in the numbers.
Tyler's more efficient?
Well, maybe not more efficient, but he's more consistently putting points on the board.
He takes more shots, though. Yeah, but that's the whole thing, though. It's like
okay, you're not wrong. You're not wrong, but I do think that Tyler Herro is more talented than Duncan Robinson, and that's what I was. And look, you're making me argue the case that I just argued against. But I think what Spoelstra's always said was, I think Spoelstra's thinking and this front office's thinking has always been, for us to hit a ceiling offensively, we need Tyler, Jimmy, and Bam to figure this out together. And if Tyler does come off the bench, it will be them giving up on that happening. And that's sort of where I'm at. So, and that's why I said I'll believe it when I see it.
I could. That's the argument then, is that Miami's ceiling is highest when Tyler is playing the best he possibly can. The problem, however, is that Tyler does not often play the best he possibly can.
And it's a hard fit, by the way. It's a really clunky fit with him, Jimmy, and Bam. It doesn't make it easier on Tyler either. It's not all on him. I want to make that point.
And I think this is what a lot of fans are thinking is at some point the coaching staff has to be like, look, I know that you make us better when you're playing your best, but you don't always play your best. And so your best role is not as a star, but as a sixth man.
And for the record, he was doing that last year. Remember at the end of the season? And then Duncan Robinson had back problems, and Tyler Herro had to go back into the starting lineup. But he was very open with reporters about, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm still a sixth starter or whatever, and for now, and all these things. Maybe the best compromise is Duncan Robinson starts games and Tyler Herro closes games, because Herro's shot making at the end of the games is so important.
I love that. I think that's fine. I don't know why it's so hard to separate that. Like, he's 24. This is year 6 for the kid. And it's like, you know what, man? Like, no one gives a damn whether you start or not. Like, that ship has sailed. It's not that big a deal. Like, Tyler needs to kind of divest the ideas like, I got to be a star or a starter. It's like, no, dude, you're getting paid a lot of money. Like, you're already who you are, and you're damn good. You could be damn good. He just needs to embrace that and take some of that ego off. But you know what? It's easier said than done. Without that ego, he wouldn't be one of the 400 best basketball players in the world. And that's the whole thing. Is like, it's easier said than done. We're talking about it from this side of the microphone, but over there, like, he is an NBA star. He is an NBA player.
He's an NBA player, and this is the part of your NBA career where you create your reputation, right? If you start, if Tyler Herro knows, and I bet he's being told this, if you start coming off the bench now, you just become that guy.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. You're just the sixth man for the rest of your career. It's really hard to do that.
Yeah.
And that's the part that people really don't outsiders are just come off the bench. Tyler Herro has his own career to think about here. And that's why I've always said, like, for Miami, maybe it is best for a change of scenery for both these guys. I like Tyler Herro. I think he's tremendously.
He's got to go to a lottery team. He's got to go to a lottery team where he's just going to put up shots and be like, yeah, you know what?
Or with a team with a ball dominant player, with a star, unlike Jimmy Butler, who Jimmy Butler just gives the ball away all the time. If you were playing next to like Luka or Shea, good luck handling the ball all the time, Tyler Herro. It's not going to work.
He wants to learn how to play off the ball. Zach LaVine, who played in Minnesota for those 2 seasons, that was putting up a bunch of points, and nobody gave a damn because they were a really bad team.
Yeah, I think he wants to start. He sees himself as a starter. He wants to make all-star games, all those things. Let's do lightning round on the rest of our lineup questions. Just give me 5 names as an answer to this. Steven writes in, starting 5, game 1. So opening night. Who you got?
Terry, Duncan, Jimmy, Nico, Bam.
I've got Terry, Tyler. Again, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yep.
Jimmy, Nico, Bam. CJ writes in, how long until Khalil Ware is starting?
When the team finds themselves 20 games under 500.
I'll say 12 months. Oh, no. Next, not this upcoming October, but the next one. So 14
October
months
2025?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Jim Reaper
Nope.
writes in, thoughts on running Jovic at point guard in a lineup of Nikola Jovic, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler, Haywood Highsmith, and Bam Adebayo?
I still like the idea in terms of like he can create stuff, he can bring the ball up and all that, but I think he still just needs somebody who's a little bit more of a sure-handed dribble option to can drive to the rim and stuff like that. Like Nico, Nico at this point cannot do that. Like had you gotten a guard in free agency or in the draft that maybe could have filled that role, then I could see you saying, you know what, we're just like, like Lamar Odom. That's a comp I've always made, but it's he played alongside point guards, Derek Fisher in Los Angeles and stuff like that, or even Dwayne Wade in Miami. Yeah. So you just need somebody else who can handle that role because you're a secondary option that can do it at a high level, and I think that's where Nico is.
I would just argue for fans that are obsessed, because I've seen this so much. Nikola Jovic should play point guard and all these things. What's the difference? Whether or not he's listed as a point guard or a power forward, the guy still brings the ball up a bunch, still handles the ball. For the last 2 months of last season, he initiated the first play of every Miami Heat game.
Yeah.
Like, who cares if he's a point guard, a power forward, a center, an umpire, like whatever you want to call him? It doesn't matter.
He'll get the opportunity.
He's still doing stuff, right?
Relax. He'll get the opportunity. Yeah, he's going to be
awesome.
on the floor. He's probably going to start if he's healthy.
Yep.
It matters. What matters is that he can knock down those threes, that he can make plays for others, that he can get to the rim and get to the line, and that he can play defense at a higher level.
And Eric Spoelstra has said, and Spoelstra has said this: we don't need a traditional point guard. We don't view ourselves as a team with a traditional point guard. We want everybody to handle the ball. And by the way, I think that's a very modern and appropriate way to think about basketball. Because the problem with traditional point guards is all they can do is be point guards, because they're usually 6'2", and all they do is handle and dribble and shoot. And they had a floor general, Kyle Lowry, right? As we move along, the Celtics just won a championship with Jason Tatum. Nobody would call him a point guard. He initiated the entire offense for an entire playoffs for Boston. Yeah. Drew Holiday and Derek White were quote unquote their point guards. They never initiated their offense. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter unless you have a guy who is sort of like the center of your basketball universe, like James Harden, Luka Doncic, like those kinds of point guards who are creating efficient shots for their teammates almost every single possession. Unless you have one like a Luka Doncic kind of guy, then it makes more sense to do it more in this way, which is what the Heat are doing.
And you know what? And that guy's a point guard, but he's dialing up his number a lot too. Press the point guard over and down. Luka?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, he's all he does is everything starts and stops with him, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine because the Mavericks still are an elite offense, way better than what the Heat have been over the last couple of years. Ron writes in, which Team USA player outside of Bam Adebayo is most likely to play for the Heat in the future? Do you want to get your crystal ball out, David?
Yeah, it's Devin Booker. I said it before. I'll say it again. I think he's at that point. Like we're looking at this offseason with Phoenix, and it's like, we're hearing rumblings already that Kevin Durant might force his way out of Phoenix to Houston. And if that's the case, like that thing is going to go ass over tea kettle really quickly in Phoenix. Like he's already dealt with it. This is like his 9th coach in as many seasons. Like he's just tired of it. He's got to be like, he's getting paid. He likes the Kardashians stuff. He likes all the flash, everything off the court. But guess what, man? Like at some point he's got to be frustrated with what's happening on the court. And if that's the case, I think he's going to be the next guy to really ask out in a big way. Like they're going to get stuck with Bradley Beal and not much else. And he's going to be like, nope, that's not what I signed up for.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Kevin Durant told Yahoo Sports this past week that he's really happy in Phoenix, but Kevin Durant goes from happy to
Brooklyn.
Yeah, he goes from happy to unhappy real quick, or he tends to. They can't trade Bradley Beal because he still has the no trade clause, so they're stuck with that. If they want to break up that roster, I don't think that they're at the point yet where Phoenix is willing to break up that roster. And for the record, I don't think that Devin Booker is looking around saying I'm ready to leave.
No.
Right. But Bam Adebayo, if I'm his consigliere right now, I'm telling Bam, hey, spend as much time around Devin Booker as you possibly can. You will be his best friend by the time you come back home from Paris, because if Devin Booker were to ever look around at Phoenix and say, you know what, it's just not working here.
Right.
He's going to make it so that he's the first person he thinks about when he's thinking about who can I kind of attach my wagon to here. And to your point, a little bit kind of what we were talking about with De'Aaron Fox in Sacramento. If you're looking around at Sacramento's obviously been a little bit better, but even with this Mike Brown stuff, they at the beginning of the summer, they almost screwed that one up too, inexplicably. Yeah. Like, you want structure, you want great coaching. And that's the other thing. Devin Booker, he's spending a lot of time with Bam Adebayo. He's spending a lot of time with Eric Spoelstra also. And he might say, I've been through a billion head coaches in my NBA career right now. I'm going on with my new one in Mike Budenholzer. He might just say, Eric Spoelstra just signed an 8-year extension. I could go into Miami, live that life, and play for Eric Spoelstra, who's a Team USA coach, who's unanimously one of the best coaches in the NBA, one of the most respected coaches in the league.
Yeah. Suppose showing love to the wrong guy. Like Anthony Edwards, great player, reminds him of Dwayne. I know there's something there that the Spo just sees that guy as like the dog, the alpha, whatever. Yeah. But like you're heaping love on the wrong guy. Like, and maybe that works for Devin Booker. Yeah,
it's like that's like 8 years down the road. He's already signed the super extension, all this stuff. He's Minnesota's his squad.
Devin Booker's are in the corner going, why don't you show me love like that? Why can't I be your guy?
Spo, Bam.
I want to be in that selfie.
Keep all that love. Yeah. What was the Asia Wilson that Bam Adebayo was photographed with, having lunch with? Have more lunches with Devin Booker. Bam. More lunches with Devin Booker. Last question here for you. And this one comes from me. So I was at a friend's house the other day. They ordered pizzas.
Okay.
2 pizzas, each pizza with its own topping. One was pepperoni, one was mushroom. At a time in my life, David, there was a point where I would see mushroom on pizza and I would walk away. That's not, that is not being consumed by me. Long story short, I have since taught myself to like mushrooms. I'm very happy about it. People who like mushrooms tend to love mushrooms. I was jealous of those people. I taught myself to like mushrooms. Now I love mushrooms. I'm a mushroom person. I found myself reaching for the mushroom slice over the pepperoni slice. And if you would have told me I was going to do that 5 years from now ago, I would have said you were crazy. But that's exactly what happened. My question isn't what pizza you're reaching for. My question to you, David, is there a pizza topping out there that is a walk-away topping for you? You see it on the pizza, you walk away. It's not going to be consumed by you.
Excluding meat? That's a big part of it right there.
Yeah, excluding meat, since you're not eating meat.
I mean, veggie. I'm trying to think. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a veggie topping that I just like despise.
Or maybe pineapple. You can even go kind of pizza or pineapple. Okay.
No, I don't. I'm not opposed to anything like this kind of take now that people don't like deep dish pizza or anything like that. I'm all for it. I like soupy pizza too. I don't care. Pizza soup, whatever you want to complain about. Like, sauce is great. Bread is great. Cheese is great. That's what makes pizza. Like, what are you looking for? Like a cracker with a little sprinkle of cheese on top? Get out of here, communist. I like people say like, oh, this is the best pizza in the world here. And it's like this really like wafer thin, ultra burnt cracker with like a smacker of cheese on top. I'm like, what? That's not a pizza, man. That's a punishment.
Wait, so what do you feel about like? Are you talking about like a New York style thin slice, or you're just
thin slice is fine?
Oh, okay,
I'm talking about like there's like this wood fired cracker pizza that people like.
Oh,
now.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's like that's punishment pizza. They give that to the gulag of pizza people. Like pineapple is pineapple is probably the one that would be most opposed to. Before that, I would say anchovy. Which is that still a thing? Like, I feel like that's an old school topping. I know it's still available, but like, my question is also like, what's the next thing that you might be open to trying that you currently hate?
Well, I'll give you my walk away thing, and then I'll answer your second question there. So my walk away item now is chicken.
Ooh,
chicken does not belong on pizza.
Buffalo chicken
doesn't,
or any
absolutely not any chicken. Chicken,
I disagree with you there.
Does not belong on pizza. It is not a pizza topping. It's chicken. It doesn't belong on pizza. Okay.
I disagree.
I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me. Come at me.
There's barbecue chicken. Like,
Awful.
never have
so
you
no,
had barbecue?
So I see that California Pizza Kitchen. Barbecue sauce is not pizza sauce. Barbecue sauce is barbecue sauce. That is my absolute most walkaway item. Barbecue sauce has no business being on pizza or anything
I
shaped like a
disagree.
pizza.
I
It's nothing.
disagree. You mix it together with a tomato sauce, and it's like tangy and delicious. Like, don't be a pizza snob. Hey,
It's not
barbecue
pizza if it's
sauce.
got barbecue sauce on it. It's
Why not?
barbecue.
Why? You mix it with tomato. It's just giving it a little tang. It's pineapple. Like, at no point in time when the Romans were sitting around the fire eating their cheese cracker pizza concoction, where they're like, "Oh, let's go to the islands of Hawaii and
that your
get some
Roman accent?
pineapple."
Not
Yeah, I
sure
don't know,
about that.
whatever. I don't know what the
Watching
hell that was.
Gladiator.
Doesn't matter. The point is nobody thought pineapple. People are making sushi out of spam. It's like, come on, let's get out
That's
of here.
also
Like,
not sushi.
No, it is not.
We could go. We could go down this whole rabbit hole. Yeah.
I agree on that.
Chicken barbecue sauce has no business being even on the same table as pizza. Get it off of there. I stand strongly with that. In terms of your second question, what's the next thing I could see myself getting into? On pizza, I don't really know. I think I'm pretty much good with everything. Like, what else? What's another vegetable? Well, all the meats, I'm pretty much
broccoli.
I'll eat anything.
I don't know who the hell decided to put on pizza.
No, that's weird. But like, I didn't even like mushrooms at all, and then I taught myself to like them, and now I'm seeing that I'll eat them on pizza. Eggplants, I'll eat. I like eggplant, but eggplant has to be like, it's more of a texture thing. But I'll eat eggplant.
People are like opposed to eggplant, and in a strange way. It's like you either love it or you hate it. It's kind of weird.
I'm kind of in the middle on it.
I love. Hey, you know what? I want to ask people eggplant pizza recommendations around South Florida, because I don't think there is one. I know there's just one place I've been looking.
Eggplant is the crust. Is that how that works?
No. It's like eggplant as a topping. Okay. Like, it's not offered a lot of places. And you go to pizza places, you're like, "Oh, do you have eggplant?" They're like, "No, we don't." It's like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'm just looking for eggplant." So if anybody out there in South Florida has any eggplant pizza recommendations, shoot them on over in our comments.
DMs are on David heads. Find the eggplant pizza. That's a good place to end. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on your favorite podcast app.